Aquaduin is one of the water companies that provides the production and distribution of tap water. We ensure you have drinkable water every time you open your tap. Aquaduin and her 5 nationwide companies often have different kinds of water production centers. This accounts for the difference in composition and therefore also the taste of tap water in different regions. The quality of the water, however, has to meet the strict requirements of European norms, which makes it perfectly drinkable everywhere. In the west of the Flemish coast, Aquaduin is responsible for the production of drinking water. Aquaduin has existed since 1924 and until recently was called IWVA. Aquaduin distributes drinking water to the municipalities of Alveringem, Panne, Koksijde, Nieuwpoort, Veurne, and to some districts of Diksmuide. Due to maintenance works and unforeseen problems, exchange of water between water companies also occurs. This cushions any deficiencies in volume of water production. Additionally to this, Aquaduin also maintains and constructs sewer systems in some of these municipalities. For the production of tap water, both ground and surface water is extracted. Both of these account for about half of the total drinking water production in Flanders. Aquaduin extracts water from the dunes. Even though the dunes make for quite the dry landscape, they contain a vast reserve of fresh water. This is mainly due to the combination of the sand layer of approximately 30 meters and the layer of clay underneath it. The dune sands not only form a permeable layer for rainwater, they also form the first natural filtration. The layer of clay, however, forms a poorly permeable layer, which slows down the infiltrating rainwater. The combination of both ground layers made it so that over the past 1,000 years, a freshwater bubble was formed in the dunes. This is replenished by rain and forms a natural barrier from the salty groundwater, located under the beach and polders. A sufficiently high water level is therefore not only important for fauna and flora, but also for the sustainability of the water extraction. Aquaduin uses a siphon drip system to pump the fresh water out of the dune sands. This is done in 3 steps: operating wells, siphon pipes, and suction wells. We install an operating well in the dunes by blasting the sand with water while drilling. An operating well contains a 12-meter-long tube with vertical slits on the bottom 4 meters. These fine slits allow the water to flow in through the dune sands into the operating well. To prevent the finer dune sand from closing up the slits, we surround the slits with a fine gravel. Through the siphon pipes, the water flows from the operating wells to a central point, the suction wells, through the principle of communicating vessels. All the operating wells connected to one siphon pipe are collectively called a battery of operating wells. Every operating well and siphon pipe have an extra branch for cleaning and removing rust. This process is done once per year. The central point where the groundwater flows towards is the suction well. This well is 10 meters deep and functions as the deepest point in the siphon pipes. The suction well acts as a buffer for the extracted groundwater. From the suction well, we pump the groundwater towards the water production center. There, we treat the groundwater to create nice tap water. To let the groundwater flow towards the suction well in a more sustainable and cheaper way, Aquaduin uses the siphon pipes. This ensures no pressure pumps have to keep running. When the water in the freshwater bubble is at the same level as the suction well, the groundwater will organically flow towards the suction well. One malefactor in this story is air. When air is present in the siphon pipes, it stops the water from flowing through. To resolve this, we use vacuum pumps to remove any air from the pipes. Once all elements are air-free, the pumps turn off, nature and physics will do their job, and the groundwater flows organically to the suction well. The production of drinking water happens in 2 steps: aeration and filtration. Groundwater is on its own a very good source to produce drinking water, but the dissolved iron and gases cause a very strong smell and taste. This makes it unpleasant to drink, and therefore we have to aerate the water to remove those dissolved elements. This aeration is done by Aquaduin by flowing the raw water through artificial waterfalls. These cause the dissolved gases to release and oxygen to mix in the water. This oxygen ensures that the iron particles in the water turn to rust flakes. From then on, we speak of brown water. Filtering containers are then used to remove the rust flakes from the water. This filtering is done by letting the water flow down through filtering layers of calibrated sand and hydroanthracite. After the water has gone through, we have potable tap water. After a while, there is a buildup of rust flakes in the filtering containers, which makes the water flow less easily. We then have to rinse the containers. By blowing air through the filtering layer, the rust flakes are trembled loose, after which water is pumped through the containers in the opposite direction to rinse the containers. We do this until the rust flakes have been rinsed away and the filter layer works optimally again. The rinse water then flows towards a reservoir where the rust flakes sink to the bottom. The sludge that remains is pumped away, dried, and discarded. The remaining water restarts the process and heads towards the waterfalls again. After the treatment of drinking water, this water is stored in service reservoirs. Once treated, it's important that the drinking water reaches the client as fast as possible. This is why Aquaduin tries to adjust the volume of produced water as close as possible to the usage at that moment. The usage of water is logically far higher in the summer than in the winter, and it's also higher during the morning and evening than during the day. When water remains stagnant for too long, bacteria feel perfectly at home, which is why we have to account for usage in the production process. Be sure to remember, when returning from a holiday, rinse your pipes first. To get the drinking water to your house, we need powerful pumps. These pumps maintain the pressure in the distribution network and make sure that water flows out of your tap. This is also how the water gets to the top of high-rise buildings and water towers. Do you know why we have water towers? They replace high-pressure pumps at times when usage is very high. When many people need water at the same time, the pressure in the distribution network decreases. When we have such a decrease, the water from up in the water tower flows towards the distribution network until the pressure is at an acceptable level. Tap water is incredibly important. Without water, there cannot be life on Earth. On a daily basis, we use more water than we realize to cook, clean our teeth, clean ourselves, drink, and much more. In Europe, we count ourselves lucky to have such a good infrastructure for our water. This is quite important because we have less water reserves than one might think. Due to an increase in construction and surfacing, less and less water can infiltrate into the ground. Often, the water goes straight in the sewer systems. When there's a lot of rainfall, this can cause flooding. If you add prolonged droughts to the mix, you can quickly see why we must take care of our water system. Luckily, there are ways in which we can all do our bit. For example, we can use rainwater to wash our clothes, clean our car, mop our floors, and so on. You can also let rainwater infiltrate into the ground in your garden and reduce surfacing as much as possible. The extraction of water from the dunes, like Aquaduin does, is a very vulnerable process. Not too much water can be extracted. Otherwise, the pressure on the salty groundwater becomes too small and we get salinization. This phenomenon is when salty and fresh groundwater are mixed and become unusable for drinking water production. To prevent salinization, Aquaduin uses infiltration water. To get this infiltration water, we have to treat purified wastewater. Aquaduin built the Toril station for this purpose in 2002. With this infiltration water, we fill up the freshwater bubble. Thanks to this reuse, we avoid all the problems that come with salinization. Why did we build it in Nieuwpoort? Because Aquafin already had a waste treatment facility here. Of every 100 liters of water that is transported from Aquafin to us, only 77 liters remain after treatment. The remaining 23 liters, called concentrate, is directed to the willow field planted by Aquaduin. When this concentrate goes through the willow field, the concentrations of nitrogen, phosphorus, and organic components are lowered so that the quality of the water improves and it can safely flow to surface water. The first step to treating the wastewater to infiltration water is filtering out all the floating debris in the pre-screen. Here, we ensure that small plastics and small snails or mussels are filtered out of the water. The next step is the ultrafiltration. In this step, the water is sucked into basins. Every basin has 7 cartridges with thousands of hollow fibers. These fibers have a membranous wall with pores the size of 1/10,000th of a millimeter. This ensures that small floating particles, bacteria, and even some viruses are removed from the water. In the next, last step, we use reverse osmosis filters. These are made up of 4 spiral-wound membranes. The pores in these membranes are 100 times smaller than the ones in the ultrafiltration. The water is pushed through this. This filtration is so thorough and strong that we speak of dead water after this step. Dead water is water that lacks all the necessary minerals to make it usable as drinking water, but it is perfect to be used as infiltration water. For the last step, the filtered water is finally ready to be infiltrated into the dunes. This is done through a large infiltration pond and an infiltration canal in the eastern part of the water extraction area, Sint-André. The infiltration pond serves as a buffer basin and ensures an optimal infiltration in the permeable dune sand. Additionally to this above-ground infiltration, we also infiltrate subterraneously through 1,500 square meters of infiltration crates buried just below the sand. The subterranean infiltration has the benefits that the temperature doesn't alter and there is no contamination of the water. After approximately 50 to 70 days, the groundwater can be extracted again through the operating wells and begin a new life in the process of drinking water production. Due to the reuse of wastewater and the infiltration into the dunes, Aquaduin has managed to close the loop and provide their customers with drinking water in a sustainable fashion. In the future, Aquaduin will continue to invest and innovate in new and sustainable techniques. This way, we'll be able to use alternative methods like desalination of seawater and brackish water in periods of drought. Aquaduin makes sure delicious water flows from your tap today and tomorrow.